mindfulness of Dhammas. We'll go into what all of that is, but we're going to start with a 15-minute meditation. So find a comfy seat. We've got lots of room tonight, so feel free if you want extra cushions or to chill out a bit. By chill, I mean lay, like whatever. Closing the eyes if it feels comfortable, otherwise a gaze on the floor in front of you. We're just going to begin by allowing ourselves to arrive in this space together. There's nowhere else you need to be right now. There's no other version of this moment that sort of needs to be happening. Just this body and this breath and this mind, just as it is. And you don't have to force anything to feel a certain way, be calmer, be more energetic. You don't have to make this a good meditation. We're just simply letting ourselves be here, and that's enough. And reflecting on what a gift it is to be able to pause, even briefly, and turn towards our experiences with some care. The meditation will begin and end at the sound of the bell. We'll start with a brief body scan. Gently bringing your attention into the body, not to analyze it, but just to feel it from the inside. You might begin to notice the points of contact in your body, so maybe where your body meets the chair or the cushion, maybe the weight of your hips, the steadiness beneath you. Let the body feel supported. We're going to begin by allowing awareness to travel slowly through the body, starting with the feet. Feeling the pressure or lightness there, the legs, moving up into the pelvis. If there's tension, just noticing it. And if you feel some ease anywhere, noticing that too. There's no right or wrong sensations. Moving upward into the belly, the chest. Perhaps noticing if the breath is already moving there. Let the shoulders soften, even just a tiny bit more. Feeling the hands as they rest in your lap or on your legs. Moving up into the neck and the jaw. Softening the muscles around the eyes. Up into your temples and your scalp. If the body feels unsettled, that's okay. If it feels calm, that's great too. Right now we're just making contact with the experiences of our body. Now, gently anchor our attention into the breath, not forcing the breath to deepen, not trying to make it longer or shorter, just feeling it. Feeling the inhale as it enters into our body and the exhale as it's released. Perhaps at the nostrils, the chest, or the belly. wherever that point of contact is most clear. And just allowing the breath to be natural, finding a rhythm that's unique to you. And let the awareness rest here for a moment. And as we sit, experience will naturally move. Sounds will arise, sensations will shift, thoughts might appear. Maybe the mood you're currently in will come and go. And for the next few minutes, we're simply practicing noticing what experiences arise and which ones fall away. So when something becomes prominent in the mind, gently acknowledge it. Maybe you hear a sound and you note it as hearing. If a thought comes up, noticing it, maybe thinking. If you feel some tension in the body, you feel annoyance at that, maybe you label that as restlessness. There's no need to be precise with the noting. There's no need to label everything, but we're just lightly recognizing what's here. And if the mind wanders and you're noticing it, that noticing is enough. You might softly name it as thinking and return to the breath. This is the practice of knowing what is present. We're not judging it, we're not analyzing it, we're just recognizing. This is the practice. Over and over again, gently noticing what's here. And now we'll begin to add sort of a layer of curiosity to that noticing. When something arises in the mind, maybe it's a sensation, a thought, or a feeling, instead of only naming it, see if you can become interested in it. So if restlessness is here, where do you feel it in the body? Does it stay steady or does it move? Does it grow when you resist acknowledging it? Does it soften when you do? If a thought appears, can you notice how it begins? Does it come with an image, a word, a sensation? Does it fade away on its own? And what we're not doing is we're not creating stories out of these things by being curious. We're not adding layers of the who, what, when, where, how of our minds. We're just being curious to what that experience is and seeing if we can notice more about that experience. No need to answer the questions conceptually, we're just observing. Notice how these experiences arise. Notice how they linger. And also notice how they pass. You may begin to see that things appear without being summoned by you. And they also might disappear without being forced. If you get pulled into a story, that too can be investigated, but more so around what does it feel like to be caught in that story? What does it feel like to realize you were caught in a story? Nothing here is a problem. We're simply exploring how experience unfolds. For the next few minutes, continue exploring that curiosity on your own. And if the mind feels too busy tonight, there's always the invitation to rest your awareness on the breath or the body. And as a reminder, when something arises, gently notice it. And if it feels natural, become curious about how it moves. The meditation will end at the sound of the bell. Gently returning to the space, getting comfortable. So tonight's talk, we're moving into mindfulness of Dhammas. And again, we're using the book Mindfulness, A Guide to Awakening by Joseph or Barry Goldstein. And when I was in facilitator training, I felt like as a group, Dhammas, when we got to the fourth foundation, which is Dhammas, it was the most difficult foundation for us to understand. I remember we were given homework to write elevator pitches for each of the foundations, so really finding very simple ways to express these like kind of large concepts. And I read my friend's pitch for Dhammas, and it read, direct quote, "I'm gonna be real with you, I don't know what this shit even is." LMAO. So shout out to you, Parker. And he turned it in that way. That was his turned in homework. And that's how it felt. Like as a whole group, we were like, yeah, that. Because often the reflection of Dhammas is like, and everything else. So you've got the four foundations and then everything else. So we're going to do all of it tonight. No, just kidding. Since it explores a lot and it's nearly half of this entire book, we're going to take the time to practice with it over the next 6 weeks. So we're really going to break it down. That way it can be received over time as opposed to just like brain dumping a ton of stuff and giving to you it all at once. So tonight is just the introduction, easy breezy, beautiful cover girl. So we're going to explore what are Dhammas. We're going to move from experience to investigation. And sort of, I'll give you an overview of like where we'll be going from here over the next several weeks. So Goldstein describes Dhammas as categories of experiences that help us understand how the mind works. Which like, bet. I'm like all about that. Give me some categories. Tell me how this thing is working. And they're not mystical objects. It's not like, these grand, aspirational, woo-woo sort of things. They're not hidden spiritual states. They're simply patterns that we learn to recognize. That's the category. They're patterns that we're learning to recognize in the mind. And the Buddha's instruction in the Satipatthana teaching says, "Thus one abides contemplating Dhammas as Dhammas." It's just straight to the point, that guy. Goldstein explains this as seeing phenomena simply as phenomena, not as self, not as personal, not as me. And so we've learned about this before, we've talked about it, but as a reminder, phenomena are simply anything that can be known in experience. And what the Dhammas point to is how those experiences arise due to conditions, and then they will also pass due to conditions shifting. And so in lay terms, Dhammas are reoccurring patterns that show up in our inner life. Restlessness, doubt, craving, joy, clarity, irritation. I've experienced all of those things in one day, I'm sure of it, at some point. And so these aren't random. These are things that we can tap into in our own personal experiences. And so when we look at the placement of the Dhammas in the four foundations of mindfulness, the first three foundations sort of help us notice what's happening. We're noticing it, right? Like that noting practice that we did in the meditation. Okay, I'm noting thought. And the fourth foundation, Dhammas, helps us recognize what kind of thing is happening. So we go from noticing to recognizing. For example, sometimes when I'm sitting in meditation and my mind keeps drifting towards, the list in my head or that noise or like the itch in my shoulder, you can fill in the blank with whatever that is for you. I sometimes experience that as like, oh my gosh, I can never focus enough. I can't do that. I'm not good at this. I just really struggle. But mindfulness of Dhammas invites a different sort of recognition. This is desire. I'm desiring to be better at this. Or this is restlessness. I'm not bad at this. There's no way to be bad at this. I am just restless. Or not I am. This is restlessness, right? Separating the I. Or this is hindrance or craving, whatever the thing may be. I'm just noticing what it is, and it's not me. Me, I are not in that, are not involved in that. And that shift may sound small, but it really changes everything. Goldstein emphasizes that the hindrances in other Dhammas are not personal failings. They are universal patterns of experience of the mind. And that feels like a huge shift for me. I don't know if anyone else has this experience, but a lot of things are personal failings for me, or they can feel that way. And so to have a practice that directly combats that feels super supportive. Moving from identity to just a pattern that's moving through. I don't have to feel a way about that pattern. It's just a pattern. I know it will come and I know it will go. And so that's Dhammas in real life. It's not a doctrine, it's just a pattern recognition. And so moving from experience to investigation, like I had mentioned, the first 3 foundations of mindfulness ask us to notice experience. First foundation, mindfulness of body, noticing the experiences of the body, the breath. Second foundation, feeling tone, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, just noticing. Third foundation, state of mind. So what we finished last week. We're just knowing what is present in this moment. But mindfulness of Dhammas introduces investigation. The Buddha repeated formula, this formula. Okay. We're going to start that one over. The Buddha's repeated formula is: one knows when it is present, one knows when it is absent, one understands how it arises, and one understands how it passes away. And it being here, the phenomena, right? One knows when restlessness arrives, one knows, one understands how it arises, one understands how it passes away. And that can be a really profound shift in thinking. Instead of just noticing, I feel irritated, we can sort of begin to wonder, what gave rise to this? What conditions have strengthened that patterned thought? What happens if I don't feed it and buy into it? When does it fade away? Does it fade away? And to be clear, this isn't an invitation to spiral. Sorry. I'm intimately familiar with the spiraling. Investigation is not creating stories. Investigation is not attachment to that pattern. It's not attachment to the why of the pattern or the how or when it's going to go away. It's just being curious. Goldstein writes that this foundation moves mindfulness towards wisdom. It's not about analyzing ourselves psychologically. It's about trying to see cause and effect clearly, about getting curious about the mechanics of the pattern, of the phenomena. An example could be craving, right? I reach for my phone reflexively all the time. No one is calling me. No one's texting me. I have no important emails. I had a BlackBerry back in the day. Why? Because it was fun. I don't work. I'm not a business person. There's no reason, but I will pick up my phone 20 million times a day just because. And so instead of judging myself, I might ask, what's driving this pattern? Is it boredom? Probably. Do I know what boredom even feels like anymore? Restlessness, maybe. I'm just feeling a little anxious to be just sitting here experiencing whatever it is. Is it avoidance? I don't know what else is happening out here, but I know what's happening in my phone. So what happens if I don't immediately act on that craving? And so that investigation gives me the opportunity to do something different, to investigate what's happening here so that I can see clearly, so I can have the clarity. Goldstein emphasizes that understanding how something arises is what weakens identification with it. That insight brings space to make different decisions, to lessen our suffering, and to see life through a new lens. And I wanted to make sure to note here, so when we are experiencing difficult things with others, so when the phenomena, right, experience is happening in relation to other people, These teachings do not imply that it's just not you seeing clearly. As I reflect on Dhammas, and it uses a lot of language right around like wisdom and seeing clear and like this inner reflection, sometimes it gives me the heebie-jeebies of like, oh, so it's all just like my fault. That's where like my mind goes. So it's all just me, and like it's not actually anything out there. That's not what the Buddha was teaching at all. He isn't saying that harm doesn't exist. He's not saying that boundaries don't matter, that there's no need for accountability. It does not mean that external conditions are automatically acceptable. Like whatever is happening out there, it's fine because you have autonomy in here. That's not it. For example, if you receive like hard feedback at work and it just like doesn't align with like how you perceived the thing to be or how you know yourself to be, and so maybe it just doesn't feel true. Mindfulness of Dhammas doesn't say my reaction is the only problem here, or their reaction to me is the only problem here. It says irritation is present, hurt is present, defensiveness is present, and you can still decide to challenge the feedback that you're being given, and you can still ask for boundaries to be set, and you can ask that the harm be addressed. Right? So I can notice the patterns that are coming up for me. Where is this activation coming from? And take action. But what this teaching supports is, instead of reacting from a flood of unexamined aversion, fear, pain, we're able to see our own internal pattern clearly. And listen, I act through my patterns sometimes. Maybe not always in the most skillful way, okay? But I'd rather do that with awareness of what my patterns are than what they're not. And I'm getting better at that. That clarity gives us more agency, not less agency. Goldstein says, the practice is not simply to know what is happening, but to understand its nature. And so where do we go from here? What will we be exploring over the next 6 weeks? We'll be exploring several of the key patterns that the Buddha pointed out to, and all of the things I'm listing are within Dhammas, which is why Dhammas was not going to be able to be split into just like two. I mean, it could, but I don't feel like we'd be getting to the root of some of these teachings. So we're going to talk about the hindrances, the aggregates, sense bases, factors of awakening, and then finally the Four Noble Truths. And so I'm going to give you a brief little one-sentence summary of what all of those things are, and then next week we'll be starting on them. So we'll begin with the hindrances, which are the forces that cloud clarity. So desire, aversion, restlessness, dullness, doubt. Not to eliminate them, but to recognize them and understand their conditions. So we'll be exploring that next week. And then we'll look at the aggregates, which are the processes that make up what we call self. So body, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. And this isn't abstract philosophy, it's a way of loosening our grip on identity. And we've talked a lot in this group about no self, and we'll be exploring some of that. Then we'll move into the sense bases, which is how experience is built moment by moment through seeing, hearing, and thinking. And this helps us notice where reactivity begins. And we'll spend time with the factors of awakening, that are the qualities that support clarity. So energy, joy, steadiness, equanimity. I hope I get that one. I don't know what week that falls on, but I hope that's mine. And these are all things not as something to be manufacturing, but as something to recognize and cultivate. So I know we talk a lot about suffering here, but there is joy and there is energy. And then we'll be returning to the Four Noble Truths, which is not a doctrine, but a lived reality. Wow. We were just talking about this tonight. At least it's not Biggie.
What is it today?
It's Jim Morrison.
Okay. All right. Well, there's some background music. That's nice. So the Four Noble Truths are understanding suffering, seeing what fuels it, and then recognizing that freedom is possible. And all of these are Dhammas. They are lenses that help us see how the mind constructs suffering and how it releases it. So all of those patterns, which, I mean, we should have known if we're breaking down like how the mind does what it does. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of lists. So to sort of conclude us for tonight and to move into an early discussion, Dhammas are not concepts to master. They are patterns to recognize. And this week, I invite you to maybe notice what pattern is here. And is it personal or is it conditioned? Thank you for your time.